Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss at Internet Shitlords, and this is Chungus's rear end. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kickstarters, which is an interesting subject because I've never done a Kickstarter, but I have reasons why I've never done a Kickstarters. I've researched this. And first, though, I wanted to do another update of another couple of my RPG Pundit Presents books, because if I don't get around to those, they're never going to happen, right? So yeah, this is my back alley here, basically. That's a weird Latin American plant, as you can see. All right, so last time we'd gotten up to number 19, which is the Fantabulous Robot Generator. And I'm just going to switch over here for the sake of a neighbor passing through. And now we are on so number 20 we're skipping over because it's just Arc Home Part 2. Here's the other side of my alley. And Arc Home Part 2, I mean, if you want to get that, there's two parts to it. I think it's RPG Pundit 16 and RPG Pundit 20, which are the two Arc Homes, but you can get them both in World of the Last Sun, okay? Along with a ton of other cool setting information. So Arcome is a city that is a kind of a exotic fantasy city. It's not as weird as some of the places in Last Sun. It's built on the inside of a canyon, and it was created by some kind of great ancient civilization, but now it's got a bunch of basically warring gangs fighting for control of the city. It's an oasis surrounded by a desolate, terrible desert, where there are great dangers like eye tyrants and eco-ogres and various other things. Look, can you see her from here? Can you see the Chungus in the distance? We will approach the Chungus with caution. But then after number 20, there's number 21, which is Hecate's Tomb. And Hecate's Tomb is a medieval authentic adventure. It's a medieval authentic adventure that is ostensibly for Lion and Dragon, but you can use it in any OSR game. And it's actually the closest sort of to a kind of almost a classic dungeon crawl that I think I did in the entire series. Oh, wait. There's Meatball. Look at that. She's saying hello. Hello, Meatball. Hello. Come on this way. Come on this way. No, they're not going to pay any attention to me as usual. But I'm going to come on this way because I want to stay within my area of the, outside of my door. So anyway, the Hecate's Tomb is set in medieval England, but you can use it for any kind of area. And it's an adventure about merchants that are disappearing when they go along a back road leading towards the capital. And when someone goes to investigate there's the main suspicion is that it's a group of bandits, but then there have also been weird sightings of strange long-beaked owl-like birds in the trees that act strangely and things like that, right? And there's a weird family that owns a freeholding, a peasant freehold farm there. So that's the premise of it, and then I can't really give away the rest without saying too much, except that it's got a set of nemesis that are, besides monsters, there's bad guys who are people, and those people are kind of well detailed with their motivations and whatnot. And then there's, as I mentioned, a tomb, right? So somebody's hunting something over there. So that's Hecate's Tomb, so be sure to check it out. RPG Pundit Presents number 20. By the way, sometime soon, but I can't say when, it probably won't be until next year, the Old School Companion number 2 will be coming out. So if you haven't gotten the Old School Companion 1, you should pick that up. It's full of tons of stuff you can use in any OSR game, all kinds of medieval authentic stuff, and there's magic, there's stuff about running court life, merchant things, there's all sorts of new grimoire stuff and magic items and curses and all kinds of stuff about the elves and other creatures and stuff, all presented completely based on actual like sources from the Middle Ages, how they saw things. And so if you want to give your game a more medieval authentic take, that would be the way to do it. Now, so that's the medieval authentic companion, but there's a second one that's coming out soon, which is going to be Medieval Authentic Adventures. And it's going to be a big compilation of, I think it's going to be 22 different adventures, 300 pages or so, probably slightly more than 300 to 325 pages. And that's coming out soon from Spectre Press. Okay, so now on to the subject of Kickstarters. And the thing about Kickstarters is, Kickstarters, we sometimes see, of course, some Kickstarters fail, but we also sometimes see certain Kickstarters that make like what looks like huge amounts of money, right? Like tons of money, especially from the point of view of the RPG industry, which is not a very high income industry, right? So when that happens, you're thinking, well, these people have just made themselves rich from RPGs. But it's not really quite that straightforward at all. Now, you can make money off of Kickstarter, obviously, otherwise nobody would be doing it. But there are a lot of cases where you can end up not succeeding at a Kickstarter, but that's not as bad as a lot of cases where people apparently succeed extremely well and yet actually end up losing money in the equation. Or worse still, realize they're going to lose money, so they just never fulfill the project and rip people off. We've seen a number of RPG-related projects that are basically that they're never going to come out at this point, or they've actually come out and said they're never going to come out. So, that's it. I wonder if I can zoom this. Oh, look, I'm zooming. Look at me learning shit. All right. So there's my cats. Way off in the distance. This is very I zoomed it up to 4.0. All right. So the thing is, here's how you can make money from a Kickstarter, right? Let's say you're trying to get a game published, right? I know, a book, something like World of the Last Sun. Oh, now it's really close up because of the zoom. I don't know how to do this stuff well, as you can see. So you're trying to get a book published, something like World of the Last Sun, and let's say you've got costs, right? Because if you're the publisher, you're going to have costs. You're going to have to do art and layout and editing and all kinds of other stuff, produce the PDF. And then there's the question of how are you going to print it, right? Like even if you print it through drive-through, that's one thing, but you might have some other idea, right? So all those things are costs. And let's say you want to do a Kickstarter to cover your costs. Let's pretend that those costs are, just for simplicity's sake, $1,000. So one of the most basic things and safest things you can do with Kickstarter is to try to raise $1,000 in order to fund your book, right? And that's perfectly fine. Now, here's the thing. If you're raising $1,000, well, people are probably going to want something back, right? They're going to want something out of the deal. And if that's the case, then what are you going to give them, right? Now, you could give them a free PDF. That can probably work pretty easily because, that technically does not have, after you've raised the basic fund cost, doesn't have any further costs beyond that, right? So you can give everybody who donates beyond a certain minimum amount a free PDF of the future product. But if they want a physical book, and of course there's a lot of people who aren't going to just shill out money for the PDF, they're going to want a physical book, then you're going to also have to take into account that physical book is not going to be free, right? You're going to have to discount at the very least the cost, the total publication cost of that physical book. So if that book, let's say, has a cost of $20, not what its cover price would be, then whatever tier you're putting it at has to take into account that $20. And your total has to go up by what you estimate to be the number of people that you expect are going to get that book for $20. Because all of a sudden, if your goal is $1,000 and you raise exactly $1,000, but you have 100 people who ended up, well, no, that would be $2,000 then. So let's say 50 people who ended up getting the $20 book, right? Then all of a sudden, you've actually gained zero, right? You've gained nothing because all of the money is going to pay for the book. In fact, you're worse off because you can't fund the book now, because you can't produce the book, because you can't buy all the other stuff you needed to produce the book. So you see how this gets tricky. So now you have to make sure that your total funding goal is going to be something in a ballpark of what you're going to guess it's going to cost you to offer anything other than a PDF. And of course, the more shit you end up offering, the more tiers of purchases with extra bonus stuff, and the more you have stretch goals, and the more you have special goals, and all that sort of stuff, where suddenly more and more things are piled up on top, the trickier that accounting and that mathematics get. And remember, you have to estimate all this beforehand, right? If you don't figure it out and you guess wrong, you could end up losing money, right? You could end up in the hole. So this is a big problem, a really serious problem, you know? And that's how you end up getting a lot of Kickstarters that turn out to be kind of disastrous. And even though they appear to have been tremendously successful, and then nothing gets delivered, you know, like James Malazewski, or well, that one might have just been outright theft. I don't know, but anyway, but there's a number of these, right, that have just, you know, been huge messes in actually delivering. So if you're a would-be funder of Kickstarters, and you know, and the same more or less applies to stuff like Indiegogo or whatever, you know, whatever other similar fundraising scheme you have, right? It's all based on the same, right? Because you've got to remember, the company will take a cut, so you have to add that. You have to estimate the cost of whatever additional costs you have for whatever bonuses you offer, like, you know, printed books. So suddenly, to be able to raise $1,000 from Kickstarter, you'd probably have to actually put as your goal something like, I don't know, $2,500 or something around there. Right, because also if the delivery is being done by drive-through, they take a cut. If you're producing books and PDFs, then the author is going to want the royalty for every book and PDF that's sent out. Right, you don't get to just give away a bunch of free books without paying the author, because the author gets a royalty from every book that comes out, right? So he's going to want his cut of the Kickstarter based on any of the pledges that were for either the PDF or the print. I mean, unless you're the author, in which case you're just stealing from yourself, or unless, you know, the author is a work for hire. But that's kind of going to, I think that nowadays that's going to be pretty unusual, because, you know, who would do that? But anyway, so if you're looking to fund, to participate, you know, to buy into a Kickstarter, if you're looking at which Kickstarters are cool, as a customer, your temptation is going to be, oh, you know, this one has like 15 different stretch goals, and it's, you know, it's getting a lot of funding, and it's got all of these different tiers I can choose from. But you end up with, you know, a real risk that the more fancy nonsense is added to the Kickstarter, the less the likelihood that Kickstarter will actually deliver. That's almost ironclad, right? And then there's the problem of people, you know, there are people who've lost money because they've miscalculated how much the Kickstarter itself is going to cost them. There's people that have miscalculated how much it's going to cost them to do these fancy extras that they propose to do to try to get people to fund their Kickstarters. Then there's people who basically rip you off with Kickstarter because they failed to deliver the products that they were promoting, right, or proposing to give you from these different tiers and what have you. And then there's also people who can't reach their Kickstarter goal. Maybe they were too ambitious, and you know, they didn't really think. Like, I get the feeling that there's some designers that are just like, well, I don't know, how much should I make it for? I'd love to have $15,000. You know, I could buy a new truck. I'll just put $15,000, and then, you know, without making any kind of coherent reason why that's the amount to raise, right? Nothing to do with the product itself. And so sometimes those people that make a certain goal, you know, I know that there are people who have ended up having to pad their own Kickstarter to get over the line, you know, and that's, you know, that actually ends up being another way you end up stealing from yourself, right? You're basically paying Kickstarter for your own product. So, those are all problematic ways of handling this, right? And now, so that's kind of part of the reason why I personally have never done a Kickstarter. Now, there's some publishers associated with me have done Kickstarters, of course, including for at least one project that I was credited to, which was Raiders of Riley. Now, that project ended up delivering, but it's been really a slow and agonizing pace. Oh, look at that. Chungus looks extra big now because of the higher rate of... Yes, I'm talking about you, Chungus. How do we get this back down? 3.2. Come on now. Hello. There you are. There's the Chungus. All right. Chungus is being very loud today. I think she's concerned. You see, these cats, they used to be the masters of this whole alley until one of our neighbors moved in with a dog. Now they're always on alert for dog. But okay. So, there's a lot of ways you can end up screwing up a Kickstarter. And that's why I haven't engaged in one yet. But like I said, some of my publishers have. And that's why you want to be cautious about it, and why you shouldn't, and you as a gamer, right, should not assume that a really large Kickstarter that has raised a lot of money is actually going to mean big profits for the people involved. It's not necessarily at all. Sometimes it will, but sometimes it won't. And all of this little talk has been actually brought about by the fact that I was criticizing this LATAM Breakthrough Kickstarter. I do not know what Chungus is doing here. She's just circling. She's looking for something. I don't think she even knows what. What are you looking for? I don't know what you're doing. And meanwhile, over there, flat as a pancake, is a meatball. But anyway, so the LATAM breakthrough people, or breakout people, yeah, that's it. LATAM breakout people were very pissed off about my videos. And some of them were saying, well, the pundit has never had a successful Kickstarter, right? The pundit has only got like $8 at his Patreon. Now, all of you who watch my videos know that every single time at the end of the video, what do I say? I say, hey, you can support me on Patreon if you really like, but I like it a lot more if you buy my books, like World of the Last Sun. That's the way to do it, right? So this is this is just the nonsense that they come up with, right? But a couple of them have said, well, we've raised more money than he's probably ever earned in gaming in his life, And let me explain to you a perfect example of why that's not true, right? Now, we do not know what the project costs of this LATAM Breakout product is. So I'm going to try to be as conservative and as generous as possible. They've raised about $25,000. Now, you just looking at the Kickstarter page, there are like, there's like 20 people involved in it. There are like 5 designers, the 2 Englishmen that are actually in charge of the project that aren't Latinos at all. Then there are, what else? There's like, in each project, there's like 3 or 4 or 5 artists or editors that all have to be paid. Now, they've said also in this project, very helpful that they've told me all this, right? In this project, they've said that the 5 game designers, and I use that term as loosely as imaginable, the 3 Latin game designers, because there's not actually Latinos, they're just Latines, are each getting an equal share, along with the 2 Englishmen who have worked out this whole project, right? The ones that are actually doing it, the two SJW gringos who are making use of Latinos to virtue signal. They all 7 of those get an even share of all profits, right? And the goal is supposed to be to pay all the costs of producing these books that are supposed to be made by these Latines. So when they're doing that, you got to figure out of that 25,000, there's 5 different books that are being made. Each of those books have production costs, a variety of production costs, and then on top of that, you have to pay all of the like editors and all, all the hangers on, right? And that's all often the case with these kind of SJW projects, right? That look like they've raised a shitload of money, but it's actually that they've like hired 40 people into the project, and every one of those got, their mom and their brother to give them money. And then suddenly they've got like, they've raised $70,000. But no, it's actually just, it's almost like a shell game, right? So out of that 25,000, I think that you're probably looking at, once you also include Kickstarter's cut and the cut of whoever the delivery person, the producer of the actual final books is going to cut for themselves also, it would probably be safe to say that at least 15,000 at least is going to be going into those various costs, right? To pay all these people off and the percentages. Now I could be a little bit wrong one way or the other, but then, like let's say anywhere between, I think it's about 15 grand, right? I think it's going to be about 60% of the project cost, and but that's not unusual. That's totally normal, except maybe they're a little bit top heavy because they have to like support all these different people to show off these different diversity people that they've hired, right? But then after that, the 7 creators have to split any profits 7 ways between them, right? The 5 creators and the 2 gringo middlemen who are actually behind the whole thing. So they have to split all of that between them. So, you could guess that the profit that any one of these people, any one of these, the top 7 people involved in LATAM Breakthrough are going to get, assuming that my calculations are anywhere near correct, and I doubt they'll be lower. They could be higher if they're doing ridiculous things, right? They could be a little lower. So let's give it a range, right? I'm figuring that every one of them, at the end of the project, unless they get like some kind of big boost at the last minute or something, and even then, there's probably going to be additional costs. Let's say that they're going to get anywhere between $700 to maybe as much as $1,800, right? Which, for the amount of work that they've done, is, well, it depends. If it's at the lower end, that's pretty terrible, actually. If it's at the higher end, it's not completely terrible, but it's nothing to write home about. Let me put it this way. I make considerably more than that per month than they did in this entire project. That's like, for a lot of them, that's the only RPG money they've made in their entire lives. So this idea that somehow they've been more successful than me because they have a 40-way split on a $25,000 Kickstarter is just absurd, right? It's just ridiculous. I'm making multiples of whatever they're going to make every month. All right. I've got the house, I've got the cats to prove it. I've got the neighbors, everything. I've got the books, and I've got, all the pipe tobacco I can smoke. So I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much. I guess on that note, this is where we can put an end to the video. If you like the video, please share it. Share it anywhere you think people will be interested in the subject, but also share it where you think people get pissed off about it. Why not? Hit the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And again, like I say every time, if you really want, if you don't play or you've actually bought every single one of the 120 products I'm involved with, then sure, support me on Patreon. Be one of the 9 people that are on Patreon supporting me. I appreciate them. I appreciate all 9 of you guys. Okay, you're awesome. You're all awesome. But if you want to get something back, because I don't put anything on Patreon, right? Patreon is if you just love me so much and support my fight and support the stuff I'm doing, support my stand on free speech, that you want to make sure that you're giving me, a couple of bucks every month. That's what my Patreon is for. But if you want to get something back, like a product, then buy my books, right? World of the Last Sun, an incredible gonzo gaming world that you can use entire, or you can divvy it up. And, there's all kinds of stuff in there that you can bring into your campaign for you to use. Same thing with all my other products. Star Adventure has gotten a lot of good press lately on social media. The Invisible College, which my next video, assuming there's not some great controversy, is going to be talking more about the magic system in the Invisible College. The magic system alone, of course, is worth the price of entry there. Lion and Dragon, platinum bestseller. I got a lot of bestsellers, you know. Hecate's Tomb, by the way, bestseller, copper bestseller on Drive-Thru RPG. So be sure to check it out, you know. And any of these products, you're buying something that you can actually use, that you can play with, right? I don't want to make any game that people aren't going to use. I want my products, because that's the other thing. Nobody's going to play these Latam breakthrough games. Nobody. They're just being stuff that is being made by virtue signalers, for virtue signalers, to virtue signal. People will put in the $5 or the $10 or whatever. They might put, you know, some of them might put $30 to get the book. You know, everybody's abuelita will do that. You know? And then, well, everybody that's abuelita who hasn't like disowned them, you know, or that they've disowned her because she's a bigot or something because she won't use the word Latin, you know. But anyways, they're gonna have those maybe, but they're never, you know. These are products that aren't made to be played. They're made to show off your diversity, virtue, power. You know, my games, everything in my games is for playing. It's for using. It's for being able to easily use in all kinds of contexts, like including, you know, to bring it in, to take it and use it in any other OSR game, right? Like in any other OSR product, right? They're easily adaptable, and you're getting something, and you're also, you know, giving me something so that I can keep up the fight and keep up my being the guy that drives all the SJWs crazy, because I'm doing better than any of them are in the RPG world, you know, and that's what drives them nuts. So be sure to keep driving them nuts. I guess that's everything. I am currently smoking Lorenzetti Half Volcano with our Argento Natural, but I set it down inside because it's a little bit breezy here, and because I can't really carry the book and the phone and watch the cats and all of that at all at the same time. So you'll just have to trust me on this one. All right. See you later.